What free agency story do you think is getting overlooked?
Well, I don't know if it's getting overlooked, and we'll see how much the league overlooks it. Tampering is such a key part of the NFL, and it happens all the time. It starts at the scouting combine, and it's just kind of accepted. That's what happens. Conversations occur when the agents and the representatives of the teams are face to face. But there's a certain element of discretion that gets applied where you don't just make it clear to the world that you've tampered with this guy. And the Falcons' pursuit of Kirk Cousins, to me, doing this 23 years, it's the most blatant case of tampering I've ever seen, where Kirk Cousins at his introductory press conference admits he spoke to and possibly met with, he might have blurted out that he met with the team's head athletic trainer during the 52-hour negotiating window where you're not supposed to talk to the player at all. And the Chiefs lost a third-round pick in 2016 for having direct communications with former Eagles receiver Jeremy Maclin before he signed with the team. And he talked to Ryan Pace, the director of player personnel, presumably during the 52-hour window. And someone enlisted him to recruit Darnell Mooney from the Bears. So you've got tampering within tampering. We've got multiple levels of tampering. And he just talked about it openly. Like they just didn't care. It was so blatant. And he said Kyle Pitts was recruiting him weeks in advance. If he did that at the behest of the team or with the knowledge of the team, that's another tampering violation. I want to see how much juice Rich McKay has. Does he have enough juice to get the league to look the other way on this and just give them a slap on the wrist or do nothing at all? Because I've never seen tampering like this before.
Mike, you certainly don't need me to tell you how right you are about the tampering. I will share with you that during my years with the Raiders, at one point, free agency started about 20 minutes after it started, and this was before the pre-free agency, not tampering, even though it's tampering, but we're just going to now start tampering earlier so we can tamper when we want to tamper, period. Free agency starts. I walk into the head of our football operations office maybe 10 minutes after it started, and there sits a player who had to fly 5 hours to get there. And I just looked at him and I turned around and walked out. And Mike, I'm sharing this with you on this podcast because since you and I both have law degrees, we can stipulate that the statute of limitations has run.
Yes, it has expired. All statutes of limitations have expired. But every year, once the negotiating period starts, you'll have multi-million-dollar contracts negotiated from scratch in 5 or 10 minutes. DeAndre Swift this year in Chicago, 10 minutes in, 3 years, $24 million, like that. An hour and a half, 2.5 hours. Kirk Cousins, despite the torn Achilles, $100 million fully guaranteed in 2.5 hours. They got to the comfort level. And they were able to conclude these negotiations in literally 2.5 hours. So, again, the NFL isn't going to do anything about it as long as you are not blatant. This year, they were so blatant. They can't look the other way. I don't think they can look the other way. We'll see if they do.
How do you guarantee that much money for an older quarterback with an Achilles injury without being able to see him on the field?
Well, we saw him on a tennis court doing half-speed dropbacks, and that's it. And he said last week he's passed the physical in all respects except for the Achilles. Now,
I saw that, and I was sitting on the set that day, and I thought, are they insane?
And, Jimmy Garoppolo's contract last year with the Raiders had language in it that could have invalidated the entire contract if he wasn't able to pass a full physical, because he had that foot injury that needed surgery. He didn't have surgery on it when it happened in December. He delayed, and then he failed the physical when he went to sign his contract with the Raiders, and they rewrote the contract, delayed the press conference. Everybody knew something was up. He had to pass a physical by the end of training camp week 1, something like that, or they just could have said, see you later. I don't know that there's language like that in Kirk Cousins' contract. I have a feeling when you got $100 million on the line, there isn't going to be an easy way out for the Falcons. I think they are committed to it, but that makes it even crazier. And that's why I think the Vikings had a ceiling beyond which they weren't going to go. They had a structure, they had a number, and they were content to let Kirk Cousins go find something else with another team. Kevin O'Connell, the head coach of the Vikings, told us that in Indianapolis. He said he wants him back 100% unequivocally, but he kept saying he's earned the right to bet on himself in free agency. They were content to let him go out there and see if he could catch a bigger fish than the one that he had on the line in Minnesota. And they had no qualms about him walking away, and now they activate their backup plan, which maybe their plan B was secretly their plan A all along. We're going to go get in the draft a guy who would potentially be our first franchise quarterback since the guy who lost to Amy's Raiders in Super Bowl 11, Fran Tarkenton.
Check out new episodes of What the Football with Suzy Shuster and Amy Trask every Tuesday. Watch us on the Rich Eisen Show YouTube page or follow and listen wherever you get your podcasts.